Gumbo Malone was trying to figure out why his coffee tasted like it had been filtered through a gym sock when Jimbo Kowalski came roaring up to the dock on an airboat that looked like it had been assembled from spare parts and optimism. Jimbo was about 40, with the kind of tan that came from spending too much time in the sun and not enough time thinking about sunscreen. "Gumbo, I need your help. Someone's trying to steal my $1,000,000 idea." "What $1,000,000 idea?" "Python boots. I'm gonna hunt Burmese pythons in the Everglades and turn them into cowboy boots. State's got a bounty on the snakes, plus I sell the skins to boot makers. It's genius, right?" Gumbo had to admit it wasn't the worst Florida business plan he'd heard. "So what's the problem?" "Some big corporation's been following me around, taking pictures, asking questions. Yesterday I caught 2 guys in suits trying to steal one of my snakes. In suits, Gumbo. Who hunts pythons in a 3-piece suit?" "What kind of corporation?" "Called themselves Global Leather Solutions. Fancy business cards, fancy car, fancy everything. But they're muscling in on my territory and I ain't having it." An hour later, Gumbo was sitting in Jimbo's backyard workshop, which looked like a cross between a tannery and a science experiment. Snake skins were stretched on wooden frames, and the smell was somewhere between a leather shop and a biology lab that had lost power. "I got it all figured out," Jimbo explained, showing off a pair of boots that actually looked professionally made. "Catch the pythons, skin them, cure the hides, then sell them to this bootmaker in Ocala. Guy pays premium prices for exotic leather." "How many pythons you catching?" "About 20 a week. Takes 2 good-sized snakes to make 1 pair of boots. I'm clearing maybe $300 per pair, plus the $50 bounty from the state." "That's pretty good money." "It's honest work, and I'm helping the environment. These pythons are eating everything in the Everglades. Birds, gators, even deer. I'm like a one-man ecological restoration project." "So why would a corporation want to steal your idea?" "Because they figured out what I figured out. Python skin's the next big thing in luxury leather, but they want to do it industrial style. Factory farming, mass production, the whole corporate deal." Before Gumbo could ask more questions, a black SUV pulled up outside. 2 men in expensive suits got out, looking like they'd been ordered from a catalog called Generic Corporate Villains. "Mr. Kowalski?" The taller one had a smile that could have been manufactured in a laboratory. "I'm Brad Henderson from Global Leather Solutions. We'd like to discuss a business opportunity." "I told you people I ain't interested." "We're prepared to make you a very generous offer for your operation. Equipment, contacts, everything." "My operation ain't for sale." "Perhaps we could discuss licensing your techniques. We're looking to expand into the exotic leather market." Jimbo crossed his arms. "You mean you want to steal my idea and mass produce it?" "We prefer to think of it as scaling up your innovation for maximum market impact." "I prefer to think of it as corporate theft." Henderson's smile got a little tighter. "Mr. Kowalski, the python leather market is about to explode. With or without your cooperation, Global Leather Solutions is going to be a major player. Wouldn't you rather be a partner than a competitor?" "I'd rather be left alone." After the suits left, Gumbo helped Jimbo check his python traps in the Everglades. They were basically large mesh cages baited with dead rats, scattered throughout the swamp at strategic locations. "This is weird," Jimbo said, checking the 3rd empty trap. "Usually I got at least a dozen snakes by now." "Maybe they moved on to a different area?" "Pythons don't just move on. They're territorial. Something spooked them." They found the answer at the 5th trap. It was empty, but there were tire tracks in the mud nearby, fresh tracks from a vehicle that had no business being in the middle of the Everglades. "Someone's been here," Jimbo said. "Someone with a truck." "The corporation guys?" "Had to be. But why would they steal my snakes? They got their own operation, right?" The answer came the next morning when Gumbo got a call from Dr. Patricia Vance at the University of Florida. She was a herpetologist who'd been studying the python invasion for years. "Mr. Malone, I think you should know what's happening out here. Someone's been capturing pythons on an industrial scale. We're talking hundreds of snakes, maybe thousands. Any idea who? Global Leather Solutions. They've got a facility about 20 miles from where Mr. Kowalski's been working. But here's the thing. They're not just hunting wild pythons. They're breeding them. Breeding them? Big warehouse full of cages. They're raising pythons like cattle, then processing them into leather. It's actually quite impressive, from a business standpoint. Completely unethical, but impressive. How's that unethical? Because they're using stolen breeding stock. Someone's been raiding wild python populations to jumpstart their breeding program. And I'm betting they got a lot of their initial snakes from Mr. Kowalski's traps. An hour later, Gumbo and Jimbo were parked outside a warehouse complex that looked like it had been designed by someone who'd watched too many science fiction movies. The sign read, Global Leather Solutions, Exotic Materials Division. "That's my truck," Jimbo said, pointing to a modified pickup with specialized snake handling equipment. "Those bastards stole my truck. Maybe we should call the police." "Police don't understand the python business. This is personal." Before Gumbo could stop him, Jimbo was out of the car and heading for the warehouse. Gumbo followed, hoping this wouldn't end with anyone getting bitten by a 20-foot snake. Inside the warehouse was like something out of a reptile nightmare. Rows and rows of cages filled with Burmese pythons, from baby snakes to monsters that looked like they could swallow a small car. The air was thick with the smell of snake musk and industrial disinfectant. "Jesus," Jimbo whispered. "There's got to be 1,000 snakes in here." Welcome to the future of exotic leather production. Brad Henderson emerged from behind a row of cages, flanked by 2 security guards who looked like they'd been recruited from a wrestling match. "Impressed? You stole my snakes. We acquired breeding stock through standard business practices. Nothing illegal about catching pythons in the Everglades. But you used my traps, my locations, my research." "Research? You mean driving around the swamp until you find snakes? That's not research, that's just hunting." "It's my hunting, my territory." "There's no such thing as territory in the Everglades, Mr. Kowalski. It's public land. Anyone can hunt pythons there." "But you can't steal my truck." Henderson's smile faltered slightly. "That's a rental. We needed transportation. It's got my name painted on the side. We can discuss compensation for the vehicle, but the larger point stands. This is business, not personal. Everything's personal when you're stealing from family operations." One of the security guards stepped forward, but before he could do anything, there was a commotion from the far end of the warehouse. Someone was shouting in Spanish, and it sounded like panic. "Las serpientes! Las serpientes están escapando!" "What's he saying?" Henderson asked. "He's saying the snakes are escaping," Jimbo translated with a grin. Sure enough, several large pythons were slithering out of their cages, apparently having figured out how to work the latches. Within minutes, the warehouse was full of loose snakes, and the security guards were suddenly much more interested in getting to higher ground than intimidating visitors. "This is why you don't mass-produce wild animals," Jimbo said, watching Henderson climb onto a forklift to escape a particularly large python. "They're not factory equipment. They're living creatures." "How do we get them back in their cages?" Henderson called out. "That's your problem. You wanted to be in the python business. Now you're in the python business." 20 minutes later, the warehouse was complete chaos. Pythons were everywhere. Workers were climbing on shelves and equipment, and Henderson was on his phone trying to explain to his corporate bosses why their exotic leather facility had turned into a reptile zoo. "You know," Gumbo said to Jimbo as they watched the mayhem from a safe distance, "maybe you should stick to small-scale operations. That's what I've been saying all along. Python hunting's not about quantity, it's about quality. You gotta respect the snakes, understand their behavior. These corporate types, they think they can just throw money at it and make it work. Seems like the pythons disagree. Smart snakes. They know when they're being treated like inventory instead of wildlife. By the time Animal Control and the Florida Fish and Wildlife Commission showed up, most of the pythons had been recaptured, but Global Leather Solutions was facing enough regulatory violations to keep their lawyers busy for years. Henderson, looking significantly less corporate after his adventure, approached Jimbo with a new proposal. "Mr. Kowalski, perhaps we could discuss a consulting arrangement? Clearly, you understand these animals better than our current staff." "I might be interested, but we do things my way. Small batches, sustainable practices, and no mass production. That's not exactly our business model." "Then maybe you should find a different business." As they drove away from the warehouse, Gumbo couldn't help but admire Jimbo's entrepreneurial spirit. In a state full of people trying to get rich quick, he'd found someone who actually understood that some things couldn't be rushed. "You really think python boots are going to be the next big thing?" Gumbo asked. "Maybe, maybe not, but I'll be ready either way, and I'll do it right." "Without corporate interference?" "Without corporate interference. Just me, the snakes, and the swamp. Way it should be." Gumbo had to admit it sounded like a pretty good business plan. For Florida, anyway.